Welcome to the Greenleaf podcast. Today we have Jason with us. He is the founder of Rise, and you've been in a real estate family for a while. And here in Atlanta, how long ago did you start Rise?
I started Rise about 5 years ago.
Look, he's got the cool hat.
I got the cool hat. We've got gear.
We gave Andrew just a medal for showing up today.
Did you bring us hats, by the way?
We're actually ordering some new hats and some shirts, so I'll be sure to drop them off for you.
Okay, we like the dry fit time.
Dry fit?
Yeah, dry fit.
It is hot.
Yeah, all right.
I'm glad you took the stickers off. My kids leave all the stickers on with the new hats. And they don't build
the flat brim, keep that.
I don't think they'd return them once you've embroidered them. I wish I was that cool to keep the New Era sticker.
Yeah, exactly.
But sounds like your kid's got some drip.
Yeah, whatever the hell that means.
So, Jason, tell us about Rise. So you started 5 years ago, and you're in all different aspects of it. So ownership, brokerage, leasing.
Yes, so I started Rise 5 years ago. I was working at a boutique brokerage after working in commercial banking for about 10 years. I'd learned a lot in this small shop prior to starting Rise. It was in investment sales only. And I saw that we passed on just a tremendous amount of transactions, not working the leasing side. It was a very big frustration for me. So I took the knowledge that I'd gained in a few years at that shop, and it was right before COVID, February 2020. Signed an office lease.
Good job.
It was great timing. I don't think I could have actually timed it better.
You could have waited 2 more weeks, maybe.
At least I would have saved on those first 2 months of office. I was very excited to hang my own little shingle, a sublease of a friend in the business. And that was a very weird time, I think, for everybody. As you guys remember, just there were no transactions happening. So in that mass chaos, I was able to build a brokerage. We really started kind of a digitally native tech first. So as we were figuring out how to do a DocuSign, you had the very large organizations at the same time really trying to figure out that process. But when it's 1 or 2 people, it's much easier to implement at a much lower cost with no bureaucracy than maybe through an 8,000 person organization. So I think as the rest of the world just struggled to figure out the new way of doing business, we were just figuring out how to do our business. Got very lucky, was able to bring my first 3 listings over. I had been working on them at my previous firm. And you find in brokerage, typically the clients go with you, not with the firm. So once I had that, I had inventory. There were no transactions going on. So left me a lot of idle time to build the firm. And I started recruiting, something I didn't think I'd want to do for maybe at least a year.
So we were one of your early listings too, I believe. We listed that property in Douglasville.
I think that was about maybe 2021.
2021, year.
Towards the end of the year. So at that point, we had 8-9 agents.
Right.
So it was those first few early listings. I'll really remember just being so lucky to have something at a very weird time. The interesting thing around March, April 2020, the big firms had just stopped their hiring processes. There were a lot of great students leaving big schools that were eager to have jobs. They weren't finding anything from the big firms or even the medium size because nobody was going to the office. Nobody knew what they were going to do, what staffing would look like going forward. We hit the ground running. We hired an intern, quickly found 4 agents joined the team in the first 4 months. We were very lucky to have some really elite graduating students, high GPAs, very sociable, great leaders that probably should have gotten full-time jobs elsewhere. And then once we got that, we were off to the races, and they learned the business very quickly. And we continue to grow. 4 years later, we have 12 agents, and we've done about 300 million in transactions in our short history.
That's fantastic. What was the first deal that one of your agents closed? Did you guys have a party when the first one went in? It's like, this is super exciting.
So for me, I had been closing deals. I've been active in the industry 8 years, maybe less excitement. The first time I realized an agent could get a deal done on their own was a little insurance agency in Alpharetta, probably a $1,600 commission. But to really be able to see somebody who was pretty fresh out of school, new to the real estate game, get a deal done and, the house made a couple $100 to pay rent off it. I'm like, wow, we could do this several hundred more times and maybe make tens of thousands of dollars.
Yeah. I mean, leasing gets overlooked a lot. We buy a deal, but like the deal nothing works in the deal unless you actually lease the thing up.
And you love paying leasing commissions too.
Well, I like leasing.
You like leasing.
If we're going to lease and occupy space, it's like, there's deals out there right now where people aren't willing to spend money to execute a lease. So they're just vacant. It's a, I don't know, interesting position right now. But
right. Well, I mean, some of these properties, with the tenants requiring is usually just outside of the owner's comfort zone or even ability.
No owner's like, you know what I'd love to do?
I'd love to spend $1 million.
Go spend some money. How do we get this money out the door? That's not exactly.
I'm going to spend $1 million getting this $100,000 a year tenant in right now.
Yeah. So, but leasing is a huge part of getting all this stuff done.
Right.
Yeah, and the role that the leasing person plays, we generally have 3 to 5 back and forths between the broker and us to get to a deal. I can't imagine how many back and forths you have with the tenant to filter from the landlord to get a deal across the line. There's got to be dozens.
It just seems like countless. It's just a nonstop wheel you have to be running.
And you're constantly educating them on every step of the process. Like, if you're going to ask for more TI, you need a longer lease term, and you have to show some credit. And why are this landlord asking for my financials, and et cetera, right? It just goes on forever. We have to educate them.
You know what I just realized?
Absolutely.
I never thought about this before, but leasing is arguably more complicated than an acquisition.
I think it can be.
Because there's a lot more moving parts, there's a lot more undefined, and there's a lot more variability than just buying a property. I mean, I could be oversimplifying it, but it seems like with leasing, there's a lot more moving parts.
I think they're both especially critical to doing well in commercial real estate. What I find most interesting about leasing is that's really where the value creation happens. When you sell a building, you're simply trading that building for what it's worth at market. With the leasing, you can really change the dynamics of what a building is worth. You've got to make those right decisions up front to put yourself in the position to get great tenants. But if you're able to attract the best tenants to your property, the credit tenants, long-term deals, minimal TI, you create long-term value when you're able to sell a property on a cap rate.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously location is important in any real estate transaction, but besides location, what can either owners or tenants do to make sure they have the best space for them?
Good question. And, it's really hard to improve a location of a property. The
location is what it is. Typically, if it's a bad location, you're probably going to get cheaper rent. If it's an excellent location, if it's one Buckhead here in Atlanta, it's going to be the highest rent that's out there. But there's that middle ground of how does a tenant get good value for the position that they are in the commercial space.
I think it's important just to have that vision for the property and understanding where you are in the market. Things like the Selig building in Midtown, I mean, that is AA office space, and they're going to put $1,000 a foot into construction and TI, and that will get tenants that pay $65, $70 a square foot. If you look at the other side of the market, maybe some of the slower office markets in the suburbs, you have landlords that are cash strapped. They don't have any money to put into their properties. And if you take something, not to hate on certain markets, but once you get 15 miles away from the perimeter, it's very difficult to lease large office space with no improvements, without significant capital investment. And you're going to get the tenants that might pay $8 to $10 gross, but they're also probably pretty poor credit. So the more you invest in the property, you'll get those quality tenants. And I think it's really hard for landlords to put their finger on where in that spectrum to be, and it is critical. Yeah. And I think it's especially important, for those investing out of state to be aware of what leases property in that market that you're looking at.
Yeah, so we're Peachtree Corners, but like right down the street, we've got this Peachtree Corners Forum, and they're spending a huge amount of money to improve it and trying to get out lower paying tenants and move in really high paying tenants. But yeah, they got to spend a lot of money to make that happen.
I found out, I think it was last week, in the Barnes & Noble spot, which is I don't know, they probably have 12, 15,000 square feet. They're removing Barnes & Noble and putting a 5-story apartment building in there. That would be about 250 units with retail on the bottom. In the Barnes & Noble spot. Just in that little corner.
Forum?
In the Forum.
Like a straight up?
Yeah, that's my understanding of what they're doing.
It's underground parking?
They're parking it all in the back. So
They got to walk. I'm just kidding.
But it was,
No parking for you.
Speaking about investing in properties, one of the ongoing jokes we have with our acquisitions guy, his name's Nathan, is painting the buildings white. So like a lot of our buildings we're buying are kind of like late 70s, early 80s red brick, kind of classic red brick color, like the traditional Acme brick. And they kind of look a little tired. So his MO on everything is like, listen, you paint the building white, you raise rents by 30%. It'll work every time. And the funny thing is, like, we look back and he's actually right. And I don't know if you have an opinion here on a white building versus or a painted brick building versus a non-painted brick building and what it shows. Like, to me, I guess you can say, like, hey, it shows that we're willing to invest in the property by painting it and maintaining the paint. So maybe there's more there under the surface. Or his point is, like, just paint it white. It'll always work.
I think it just makes it look fresh. It gives it a South Florida feel to it. The question, would I do it? Is it in the CAM structure? And maybe this is getting very technical, but do the tenants pay for exterior maintenance? If they do, paint that white as fast as you can, bill it back to the tenants. But we've also done that in situations at the landlord's expense because it does add a fresh coat. Simply painting the numbers on the side of the building, gooseneck lights, bright abstract colors. It does a lot to brighten up some of these 70s and 80s brick buildings or stucco buildings. And that is definitely attractive to tenants. I don't think anybody's told us specifically, boy, I'm glad this building is white. I want to lease here.
Don't tell anyone our secret sauce.
No, it's
We're
top secret.
This is going to be on YouTube, by the way, Josh, just so you know. Just to be clear.
No one will figure it out.
No one's going to know it's there. They're not going to listen to it this far. Okay.
I do wonder if this trend will last because the problem with painting it white is that in 5-6 years, you need to paint it again.
It's not going to be white anymore.
Sherwin-Williams is like, yes, all white.
Cover the earth.
Cover the earth. And in 5 years, we're going to come up with another color. We're going to paint them all that.
Paint it white, and we're going to give you this bright white. And by the way, we're going to sell you the cheapest white possible, too. So it'll only last like 3 years.
And the brick guy's like, why this was fine? Why did you change it?
Exactly.
You never had to do anything for like 1,000 years.
I sold you a low maintenance building material. That's why you bought it.
So, Jason, you got lots of real estate experience, but you grew up, would you say you grew up in a real estate family as well? And that shaped like you wanting to do it or not? Or you?
I think it absolutely had an impact. So my father's a retired radiologist, and I figured out early on I did not want to go into the sciences. Very glad I made that choice. And so my mother was a broker and still is a retail developer, working nationwide with single-tenant, multi-tenant retail strip centers. I was always fascinated by just her making the deal. It always seemed it was interesting which lever could you pull. And she often worked with a tenant, represented restaurants like Ruby Tuesday, IHOP, Krispy Kreme, and just trying to make the deal and what it took to beat out Chili's to get the space. And just learning that business. And she was really on the frontier as the whole triple net single tenant net lease business took off. And just always found it fascinating, even as a high school kid, how Kroger or Walmart will carve out parcels and you can take those parcels, tie them up, and flip them to SunTrust Bank or Chick-fil-A with a tremendous profit. And as a 15, 16-year-old that didn't want to work hard, and I would buy Peach Bowl tickets and sell them after they announced who was going to be there. Like, I love to make a buck, to hustle. I'm like, oh, this is kind of the same thing, and you can make an honest career out of it.
But it's very important, though. Are your mother and father okay with you not being a doctor or a lawyer?
I think they're okay with that.
Sure, okay.
As long as I'm not getting into trouble.
Okay.
Can you get your mom to build a Ruby Tuesdays somewhere close to here? I love the salad bar.
I don't think they're opening any new locations.
No new Ruby
They went
Tuesdays?
bankrupt. Didn't they go bankrupt?
They were my go-to lunch when I lived in Corinth, Mississippi, like every day.
Oh,
Yeah,
I'll let
that
them
salad
know
bar.
that. I mean,
Yeah.
it's excellent burgers.
I did
Maybe
whatever I
unlimited
could-
fries?
Yeah. No, that you're thinking about Red Robin.
It's Red Robin.
Yeah.
They do
That
have
would have
a
been great,
salad
though.
bar.
How many years ago was Corinth, Mississippi?
That was a couple years
We're
ago.
deciding on retail locations from 20 years ago on what was working well. Did you go
Exactly.
to like Chuck E. Cheese too?
She might remember that one. So,
Yeah, the Captain D's invite is always there, and I will pay and I will treat you.
The chicken fingers out, Captain D's.
I was
feel like
promised
it's
there'd
a
be
farce.
Captain D's here, by the way.
That's the after episode treat.
Oh yeah, yeah.
We don't want to eat it beforehand because we don't want to get sick while we're doing this.
Get it on
Get
DoorDash.
sick eating Captain D's. You get awesomeified by eating Captain D's.
Awesome.
It's stronger.
Captain D's is the most precious thing in the entire world to me, and I can't believe you guys do this to me every time when we talk about
Every
Captain
marathon
D's.
he runs, he shoves Captain D's down his throat the morning of.
I guess I'll be honest. I've never ever been there, so
You've never been to Captain
I
D's?
can't really.
I've not
can't
either.
really
Oh
judge.
my God.
I've seen you eat it many times, though.
Yeah. So Jay, you're looking at two things growing up. You're looking at radiology.
Radiology.
Or real
and
estate deals.
He never loved it. I mean, it's shift work, and it's difficult to be a doctor versus the world of real estate where you got to go to ICSC, hang out with crazy people, and it always seems there's a deal to do.
Wait, was there the robot this year that Dave might have fallen in love with?
That was 2 years ago.
That was
I think
2
she
years
retired.
ago. Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Last year was the
New show.
animatronic frog.
Ah, okay.
No, that was 2 years ago. Not this year. Last year.
What was the name of that restaurant?
Last year, the steak place we had at the hotel. That
The robot was this year.
the robot was the robot woman that was flying.
Oh, that was at the Wynn.
I must have missed
There's a
it.
big conference in
You
Vegas
were
each year.
there. You just don't
ICSC that
remember
we're
because
talking
of the alcohol that night, possibly.
about. No.
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 So, real estate, radiology, way different conversations.
A lot of time riding around in the car, seeing sights, and just seeing. It was a fun business, very sociable, and just very much entrepreneurial driven. That you can kind of go out there, work the deals, you put in the effort, and just getting to negotiate is something I'd always knew I'd enjoy.
So, you think that's the highlight, the negotiating part?
There's nothing I enjoy more than pulling the levers to make a real estate deal get done.
Yeah.
It's just an active game theory, and that's something I've always enjoyed.
Yeah. What are you thinking here, Josh? Josh, you love the
A
negotiation.
quick side story about negotiation. So during COVID, deals got a little bit few and far between. So I couldn't negotiate with anyone, and there was just not as much stuff in this universe to buy. Everything was tight. So I got on eBay, and there's a part of eBay where you can make an offer. You can filter by anyone that's willing to let you make an offer. And so I looked at some gold coins, some silver bars, whatever. And I started just making offers and negotiating people on eBay and going back and forth with them. And it filled my need for negotiation. So if you ever just want to haggle with someone, eBay has plenty of space for that.
That's good to know.
Yeah. It's always there for you.
Is that how the fire truck ended up here?
Maybe.
The need to negotiate. So even within real estate, you're in the ownership side.
Yes.
You're doing value add work as well on some stuff. You're leasing, and you're on the transaction side too. Any one of those that you prefer the negotiation on, or is it really the negotiation that's the exciting
it's the
part? Or is it-
negotiation that's exciting, whether we're doing it for our own properties or a third party. I do like working the landlord side more than the tenant or the buyer side. I've always found the landlord side, when you can control the inventory, whether it's for leasing or for selling it, you have a lot more power in that transaction. And we do run with some really incredible tenants, and we've done a lot of tenant rep and buy side work. But just personally for me, I find it fulfilling, especially when you get to work on the landlord side and have the control.
Yeah. Very cool. What do you think on your negotiating, Andrew?
Well, I'm thinking about this when I'm doing a deal. It's almost like putting pieces together and making it all work, because number one, you have to figure out what the seller wants, and how do you meet your own buyer's needs, and you're always in this back and forth negotiation of how to make it work. And so to me, it's a big puzzle you're trying to put together, and I love puzzles, so I could say I'd have a similar answer.
Never thought of it as the puzzle, but
But it is. It's a gigantic puzzle. How do you put this puzzle together, and how do you make it get to the finish line, and how do you get it to be done? Because when it's done, it's done. It's not just, you're never going to be missing a piece, or if you're missing a piece, something wrong happened during the negotiation.
This is coming from a guy that builds Legos all weekend. So
It's Lego. Remember, there's no such thing as Legos.
My bad.
It's Lego,
My bad.
singular.
He
It's
caught
singular
me.
and
Isn't
plural.
Legos a country?
No, Legos. There's no such.
Lagos.
Lagos.
Capital
Legos,
Nigeria.
both plural and singular. We've had this conversation multiple times, Josh.
I know it
Doesn't make sense.
doesn't have space in my
I
brain.
will show it to you
be
on the
retained.
internet.
It's
They
Danish.
would never put anything untrue on the internet. Just remember that.
No.
Never.
And all of your news is from memes too, because all the memes are correct.
Jason, do you believe that every deal is a win-win? Do you believe that it's a win-lose or a lose-lose, or do you think it's a hybrid that there's going to be a winner and there's going to be a loser?
I don't think their deal would ever be a lose-lose, or no party would.
No,
jump into
when I
it.
say lose-lose, I mean that like both parties are unhappy. So let's get the
I
deal
think it's
done.
that basic negotiation strategy of, what's critical for me, what's critical for you, and there's sort of the lines you can't cross. Whether it's a tenant needs a term of 5 to 7 years, or maybe they will pay 15 max. But then, how do you trade horses in the middle? Because both sides want and need a deal to get done. There's legitimate need on both sides, and it's really the details. Can they sublet? How do they sublet? Can they leave midterm? Is there free rent? Is there TI? I mean, there's not really an incredible amount. It's just a financial transaction. And when a landlord is looking and a tenant has a high tenant improvement funding request, does that math make sense to the landlord? Are they going to lease for long enough to pay him back? Or are you just spending $50 to make $70 over 5 years? And especially now as interest rates are high, everybody's faced with a much higher cost of capital, so you've got to be especially careful
That
when
makes
you make
sense.
your deals.
Let's talk about that point right there when you say like if you're spending $50 to make 70, because we'll look at that math sometimes and say how much are we spending up front, and essentially what does that return over a 5, 7, 15-year period? Like how much rent are you going to get? Is that the ratio you're looking at a lot of times with stuff?
Oh, that's critical to lease negotiation. I mean, you just have to build a discounted cash flow because everything really does affect the overall deal. You have the leasing commission, you have free rent, you have tenant improvement money, any kind of rent abatement, construction period, and then understand if you could add those periods back at the end of the lease. And then you have to even know more. Is the TI, is it going to make this property more leasable to the next tenant? Or are we just putting in a very specialized lab or specialized manufacturing for a company that in 7 years could just disappear? And you've got to understand all of those factors as you price your rent, because we'll see out a lot of the time just a lot of fool's gold and companies that will pay well above market and get you very excited about a long-term lease. But really, if you look at what it takes financially to get that lease started, it would be a terrible decision.
It's an interesting way of looking at it. Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. We've looked at some deals too where like how much you got to spend up front to get the deal across the finish line. If it's too much, can't do it. We're looking at that now with, are you doing anything with new build space? Because we've looked at new build space and it just seems like it's priced too aggressively for the payback that you're going to get.
I don't want to discourage land investment and development, but we're finding it to be very challenging.
Yeah.
And we do some projects where people are going ground up, building new product, but you really need to be careful. My mother Marla does it, but only once a tenant has signed a lease.
Yeah.
And building spec is just a very risky game. It works in multifamily, but for office, even industrial in this market's quite challenging.
What do you think? We were looking at some of these and we're always like trying to find what the angle is or what the opportunity is, but the seemingly growing number of vacant like CVS's and Walgreens and great locations with pretty big buildings that are kind of hanging out. It's weird that some of those businesses aren't working, but then also it's a great piece of real estate that can be turned into something.
So I don't think the business model of CVS and Walgreens works, and it probably hasn't worked for 15 years, but we haven't noticed. You can get body wash on Amazon at Costco for a third of the price. And I think the general consumer market understands that. So as that business model fades away and they either close these locations or give up on their lease, The one thing that they did do right, CVS and Walgreens over the last 30 years, was pick killer locations.
Yeah.
Busy intersections, high traffic areas. And what we've seen, and this is still very early, as drugstores, I guess, fade out of relevance, is that there are a lot of users that want to take these spaces. Whether that existing store could become maybe a discount grocer, dollar store, or gym, or just seeing these parcels become typically fast food locations, sometimes medical.
You like tear them down and build fast food, or just
Typically, they're going to be difficult to convert for fast food because I think they're around 9,000 to 12,000 feet, which is much bigger than what fast food wants. You will see some Planet Fitness, Crunch Fitness, dollar stores, the Lidl, Aldis of the world taking over these sites. But what we've seen early on in some of the Rite Aid closures is that there's a very strong market for this product.
I was just looking at it quick. I'm like, how many CVSs are there? There's 9,200 CVS locations.
Wow.
And then you had Rite Aid or Walgreens. Like you could make a whole career out of just doing whatever you're going to do with those locations.
No, absolutely. And as a broker, that is tremendous opportunity. We've really built a specialty in taking these infill suburban properties that are no longer fit, for a Walgreens or CVS use, or maybe a closed restaurant. Helping understand the value just based on what is land, what are vacant buildings trading for in the area, and getting it to the right hands, typically developer or an operator for the next life of the property.
It's pretty cool.
The ones that are really going to be hurt, it's going to be the widows and the Californians, New Yorkers that bought these just 5-cap Walgreens paying $6 million for maybe an 8,000-foot building on a decent corner. It's not that the real estate's going to go to zero, but that just turns into land value at maybe $1.5 million an acre.
That's going to need some investment to.
That will also, need continuing investment for whatever that conversion would be.
Yeah. Interesting. It seems like unique. It's a unique position in real estate right now. See how it plays out. We've looked at some, but we've never.
We have one we're looking at right now for a conversion. So
the other one, we had a vacant Walmart at one point that we were looking at. That was up in Chattanooga. So had like 8 years left on it.
And they were paying rent.
They were going to pay it.
Yeah. But then what do you do with a vacant Walmart after 8 years? That's
Andretti's.
Putting go-karts.
Go-karts? Andretti's.
Yeah. Or paintball.
Pickleball.
Or pickleball.
Pickleball.
Fun
It
activities.
seems to always be the answer right now.
Pickleball is the answer for
Pickleball.
everything right now, isn't it? Yeah. We could put pickleball in here, can't we?
Probably pull it off.
You can put it anywhere.
Yep.
All right, so you were also mentioning you just got back from Europe. Quick little trip.
Just got back to Europe. Was
Apparently sort of for the Olympics, maybe not for the Olympics.
Paris right before the Olympics. Earlier this summer, Finland, Denmark, Turkey, Poland. So that was a fun adventure.
Just a little trip to Europe.
Little trip.
Yeah.
I think 2 to 3 days in each country.
Wow.
Oh, that's moving
That's
through there.
fast moving.
Highly recommend it. What's great about Europe right now, the economy is so slow that it is cheaper to travel throughout Europe than the States. So just an excellent cultural opportunity.
So how often when you're traveling are you looking at what real estate deals for sale? What can you do with this location? Can you turn it off or no?
I've avoided that, I think, till recently. Just from a commercial real estate perspective in Europe, they don't really work and open as many businesses as we do here. So it's fun to see leasing signs. I'm not really thinking too much. I need to take a little time to relax. But the housing stock is very interesting. And there are definitely some deals in very desirable places in Europe. I think the Russian money is no longer coming into Europe as strong as it was. They don't have the economic growth that we do, and interest rates are still depressed. There are some great buying opportunities. So maybe you're going to announce it here, the new Greenleaf Fund.
Yes, the Greenleaf Fund to buy
European residential.
Condos.
the $1 Italian
Castles
homes.
in Europe.
I always love when I travel. I always like looking at the different brands and the marketing around those brands. And not only I remember I was in Argentina and they had, instead of Dunkin' Donuts, they had Dunkin' Dagels. Same D, same logo, same everything. It was just kind of a rip off of Dunkin' Donuts.
Interesting.
But yeah,
Was that stolen or was
no,
that?
it's a complete rip off.
Oh, okay, it wasn't. Yeah.
But yeah, I think looking at the brand comparisons, and then also in the grocery store, when you're going through the grocery store and looking at how they present their meats, their their produce, all their brands. It looks and feels a lot differently than here.
Oh, it's just fascinating, and
Yeah.
typically, yeah, much better quality food, much better prices.
The hard part was traveling in Europe with 4 kids and feeding them. Like the grocery store, like you would get, let's just say like a box of pasta. It's about a third the size of what a box of pasta is here. So I need 6 of those things to feed 4 kids.
You ever eat like a box of the cheesy noodles, or like this is for a family of 4? You eat the whole thing.
Only
like,
one
really?
person eats it. Yeah.
One person can eat it.
Yeah.
Man. So what was Paris like?
So it was right before the Olympics. It was security lockdown. You could not drive across the city. Huge military presence. Overall, it was still very charming.
Yeah.
They still love to smoke. They love to dine. They love their wine. And it is, you hear the things about Paris. The people are rude. The city is gross. And it was just fabulous. They had maybe just cleaned it up for the Olympics because the world was showing up, but they did a great job.
Did you have your 9 o'clock dinner there?
I think some 9 o'clock dinners. Yeah, they don't go to sleep. They're out dining till midnight, 2 a.m. every morning.
Josh and I are heading to sleep at 9 o'clock, 9:30 maybe.
It's funny. I was traveling with the kids in Spain. We never, like the earliest dinner we hit was 10 o'clock. We didn't go to sleep before midnight. We would sit at 10. By the time we got home, it was midnight.
With Isaac and Owen too.
Because they don't start, like Spain doesn't really open for dinner until after 9. It'd be going to dinner like 4:30 here if you went at 9.
Oh my God, I wouldn't make it.
It's just different.
Different. Yeah. Cool. I will. Thank you, Jason. We appreciate you being here. And some questions on the real estate market. So always good to hear from you.
It was a pleasure to be here. Thank you guys so much for having me. You're one of my most valued clients. We've had an incredible long-term relationship. Also a Greenleaf investor, and great to see you guys continuing the awesome work.
Cool. Thanks, Jason.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Yep.